This is slope as rate of change. Now, in the first couple of examples that I have pictured on the whiteboard here, I will ask you to determine the slope of each of the 4 lines. I have 2 lines on the left picture, one is green and one is red. And I also have 2 lines on the picture on the right, one is blue and one is yellow. So again, the question is, find the slope of each line. So we'll start with the red line, and I'm going to color code it here. The red line, as you can see, is falling from left to right. That tells us that the slope will be negative. There's a couple of different ways you can compute the slope of the line that is pictured. You can find the coordinates of 2 points, and you should always be able to find the coordinates of the points that are not decimals or fractions. For my red line, I have 0, 2 here, and it just happens to be the y-intercept. And I also have this point here, which has coordinates 1, -2. So you can use these 2 points and the slope formula that I described in my previous recording and calculate the slope algebraically. However, in my opinion, it's easier to simply count the units. Remember, the slope is rise over run. That means how many units it takes to travel from one point to the next vertically versus how many units it takes to travel horizontally. So I'm going to start at any of the 2 points that I have on my red line. I'm just going to start at the top one. It does not really matter where you start. And I'm going to count how many units it takes me to get to the level of the second point. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 units. That means my rise is 4. So negative, remember, fall in line, negative. 4 is the rise. And then how many units does it take me to travel to get to the second point? And that's 1. So -4 over 1, or simplified as -4. That's it, that's your slope. Now let's calculate the green slope. Now for the green line, that one is actually rising from left to right. It goes up from left to right, so I know the slope will be positive. Again, you're welcome to use the slope formula. Please reference the video that I posted in the previous section, but I'm just going to go ahead and count the units. So from this point here to this point here on the green line, I have to travel 1, 2 units up, and then 1, 2, 3 units to the right. So that's 2 over 3, and it's positive, and this fraction cannot be simplified. So that's it, that's a slope. Moving on to the picture on the right, you have the blue line, which is horizontal, and you also have the yellow line, which is vertical. I did mention before, but just a reminder, the equation of the blue line, if you were ever asked to write the equation, will be y equals 3. That is the equation of any horizontal line. Simply y equals whatever number it hits on the y-axis. In this case, it's 3. For the vertical line, the equation will be x equals 2, and it will always work for any vertical line. It's simply x equals whatever number it hits the x-axis at. Anytime you have a horizontal line, so for the blue, the slope is always 0, m equals 0. Remember, m is the slope. And then for the yellow line, that's the vertical line, m is undefined. Oftentimes, you will be given a word problem, and you will be asked to compute the slope and determine the meaning of the slope within the context of the given situation. So here's the word problem. A company discovers that to produce 630 new electronic parts, it will cost $36,720. to produce 850 new electronic parts, it will cost $48,600. So what is the slope and what is the meaning of that slope? Well, essentially what this problem gives you here is 2 points. And it actually says x is 630 and y is 36,720, and that will be your first point. So this is your first point, and this will be your x1 and y1 for the purposes of slope calculation. The second point is 850, 48,600, and that will be your x2 and y2. So remember the slope formula, that's y2 minus y1 on the top, x2 minus x1 on the bottom. So let's go ahead and plug those numbers in. On the top, 48,600 minus 36,720 is 11,880. At the bottom, 850 minus 630 is 220. So I'm going to go ahead and try to divide 11,880 by 220, and it actually divides nicely to 54. For problems where you have context that ask you to find the slope, even if 220 does not evenly go into 11,880, I would like for you to create a decimal and still have this one number, not a fraction. And that's a general rule for word problems. Unless the word problem specifically asks you for a fraction, it is a good idea to do a decimal. So 54 is the slope. It's a positive slope. And the question says, well, what is the meaning of this slope? Well, let's think about what it is that we have. Remember, 11,880 here is the dollars. We had $48,600 minus $36,720, and then the bottom number here is the parts, the electronic parts. So when we divided 220 into 11,880, we got $54 per essentially one part. We did not write that one, but that's there, per one part. So the meaning of this slope is the price that it takes to produce one electronic part per part. And oftentimes when you're thinking of a slope within a context, the word per will be applicable. Miles per gallon, for example, or price per part, people per year, and so on. Here's another example. Last year, Pinwheel Industries introduced a new toy. It cost $7,700 to develop the toy and $35 to manufacture each toy. So this here I would like to read as $35 per toy. So $35 per toy. Keep in mind that if you can apply the word per, that's likely your slope or your m. So part 1 here asks you to give a linear equation in the form C equals mn plus b that gives the total cost C to produce n of these toys, okay? Now, keep in mind, we know that our m is the slope. So as of right now, I know that the equation is going to look like this. C equals 35n plus b. Now, this does look like y equals mx plus b. They just used n and c instead of x and y, but this is essentially the same equation. The problem is b. Where do I find b? Well, if slope in the context of a question can be described using the word per, b in the context of questions like this can be described as the starting amount, the original cost, the initial amount of whatever it is the problem describes. So here it says the initial cost to develop the toy is $7,700. So the final equation is C equals 35N plus 7,700. Part B says the total cost to produce 2,600 toys is. So to answer that question, you will use the equation that you just wrote, and you will replace N in that equation with 2,600. So C equals 35 times 2,600 plus 7,700, 98,700. And that's it. That answers part B. Part C, with $105,700, a total of toys that can be produced. So in this problem, we will still use our same equation, but instead of replacing N with a number, we will replace C with 105,700. So 105,700 equals 35N plus 7,700. This one requires solving. We have to find N. So I will first remove my 7,700. Since 35, this 35 here needs to go last because that's multiplication. We always remove multiplication last. So 7,700 goes here through subtraction. Now 105,700 minus 7,700 is 98,000 equals 35N, and then we divide both sides by 35 to get N equals 2,800. What this means is if you have a budget of $105,700, you should be able to produce 2,800 toys. Here's the last final question. A city's population in the year X equals 1981. Keep in mind this will be the X of your first point, was Y equals 1,024,300. So that will be the Y of your first point. I'm going to go ahead and write the first point as coordinates. So this is your X1 and this is your Y1. In 1986, the population was 1,024,800. So the population grew since 1981. So in 1986, it was 1,024,800. Let's go ahead and create the second point. The question asks us to compute the slope of the population growth or decline. Now we did discover that it grew to 800 from 300, and define the slope, what the slope means. So we will go ahead and use our slope formula, y2 minus y1 on the top, x2 minus x1 on the bottom, and let's go ahead and plug the numbers in. So on the top, once you subtract, you will have 500. And on the bottom, once you subtract, you're going to have 5. So we simplify this fraction to 100 over 1. And let's determine what the slope means. Now, when you're answering what the slope is, just say that m is 100. You don't actually need the fraction. But to understand the meaning of the slope, it's better to have this 1 at the bottom. So on the top, we started with population. So population here, and I have it written in yellow here. This is people. And then at the bottom in blue, you have years. So we have people over years, specifically 100 people per 1 year. So the meaning of the slope is that the population of the city grew by 100 people per year.